Tonight,
Iran appears to be standing down.
confirmed no American lives lost in the wake of Iran's missile attack on U.S. forces in Iraq.
Iran will never be allowed to have a nuclear weapon.
Still, the president is threatening to impose new sanctions against Iran.
And on Capitol Hill, a stalemate in the Senate over the looming impeachment trial. All after a Ukrainian passenger jet crashes outside Tehran, killing all on board.
Plus, ongoing natural disasters devastate populations from Puerto Rico to Australia.
All this and more tonight on Faith Nation.
Backing away from the brink of war, but not without threats of new sanctions against Iran. Welcome to Faith Nation, and thanks for watching. I'm John Jessup.
And I'm Jenna Browder. Iran appears to be standing down. Direct words from the president today.
And while the president appears to be pulling back from further military action, he vows a nuclear-armed Iran will never happen under his watch.
CBN News White House correspondent Ben Kennedy joins us from the North Lawn with more. Ben?
Well, Jenna and John, President Trump delivered a message of strength and resolve as he stood up against the ongoing threat of Iran. Trump said the early warning system worked, and as a result, all American troops are safe. He then turned his sights on the consequences for the strike and slapped new sanctions on the regime, adding they will remain until Iran abandons its nuclear ambitions and ends its support for terrorism.
As long as I'm president of the United States, Iran will never be allowed to have a nuclear weapon.
With his military and security team by his side, President Trump addressed the nation in the wake of the counterattack.
We suffered no casualties. All of our soldiers are safe.
The missile strike on military bases in Iraq housing American troops was in response to the U.S. drone attack that killed Iran's top general Soleimani.
He viciously wounded and murdered thousands of U.S. troops, including the planting of roadside bombs that maim and dismember their victims.
Iran's supreme leader wants all American forces out of the region. The president said he is ready to work on a new deal with Iran as they continue to fight a common enemy.
ISIS is a natural enemy of Iran. The destruction of ISIS is good for Iran, and we should work together on this and other shared priorities.
He also wants NATO more involved in the Middle East peace process.
And we must all work together toward making a deal with Iran that makes the world a safer and more peaceful place.
Now, the president has criticized NATO as obsolete and in the past encouraged members to beef up their military spending. The commander-in-chief said Iran appears to be standing down, which is a good thing. The big question, is it truly over? And will the regime take up Trump's offer to talk? Now, in the past, Iranian leadership said there will be no talks until sanctions are lifted. Jenna?
All right, thank you, Ben. And here now for more, Michael O'Hanlon, Senior Fellow and Director of Research for the Brookings Institution. Michael, good to see you. You know, President Trump, he seemed to lower the temperature today in his speech. He said Iran appears to be standing down. Is he right?
Well, I think this is a good day for sort of temporary de-escalation, and I'm happy to see how it's played out given all the alternatives. So I think that, yes, for the moment, we can breathe a bit of a sigh of relief. I think the Iranians intentionally missed, so to speak, in their targeting yesterday, or at least they made sure they didn't cause large numbers of casualties. And undoubtedly, we were pretty hunkered down in those bases to begin with. And I think President Trump's done the right thing by not deciding on any further military escalation. I think the talk of sanctions intensification was mostly rhetorical and symbolic because our sanctions are already so comprehensive. And so, yes, I think that for the moment, we can say that this has maybe leveled out. But there are still big issues about the U.S. military presence in Iraq going forward, if that can be salvaged, and ultimately about how we prevent the next Iranian provocation, because they are under such severe economic pressure now that I don't believe they are likely to stand for it. And I think they'll look for other ways to put pressure on the world to sort of rethink the place we're at right now. So it's a temporary lull. I don't think we're done.
Michael, why didn't Iran deal a bigger blow? Was this sort of a save face effort on their part?
It's a good question. It may also be that they recognize, frankly, they have the upper hand in Iraq right now. Iraqi politics seem to be trending towards expelling the United States. If that happens, I think that Iran will get a big net benefit out of this whole set of exchanges, even with the death of Soleimani, because they will become the preeminent foreign power inside of Iraq rather than being balanced by us. And to the extent they caused a lot of casualties on Iraqi soil, the Iraqi people could turn against them just as many of the lawmakers a few days ago turned against us. Also, of course, they didn't want to invite any retribution or retaliation onto their own soil by the United States military. So I think for those reasons, they chose to do something that they could claim was a response, but ultimately did not require President Trump to take another step himself. And again, I think that's a relief compared to some of what the alternatives might have been, but it's by no means the end of the story in this broader narrative that's developing.
Today, in his comments, President Trump, he also called on more help in the Middle East from NATO and our European allies. Michael, do you foresee that happening?
No, I don't think that's going to be very likely, in the sense that President Trump, as you know, for reasons that are debatable and defensible, but still unilateral, pulled the United States out of the Iran nuclear deal that many European countries had been part of and still are part of in some sense, what's left of that deal. And I think at that juncture, he lost the ability to really bring Europe on board with his Iran policy. There are some countries in the Middle East that will support him, Saudi Arabia, a couple others in the broader Gulf Cooperation Council on the Arabian Peninsula. But I don't think we'll get much help from Europe unless we come up with a more credible long-term vision for what it would take to get back to negotiations with Iran and get maybe a better, tougher deal than President Obama was able to achieve, but still one that's much more realistic than President Trump and Secretary Pompeo have been advocating in the last couple of years. I think their visions are unrealistic, and Europe is not going to come along with a policy that they see as unpromising and dictated solely by Washington.
All right, Michael O'Hanlon with the Brookings Institution. Always good to see you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jenna. Take care.
Well, President Trump sent his top national security advisors to Congress to brief lawmakers about the killing of Iran's top military general after some question and even criticize the move. For more on the legislative angle, we now turn to CBN Capitol Hill correspondent Abigail Robertson. Abigail, it should come as no surprise that Republicans support the president, while Democrats are discussing limiting Trump's authority to act without congressional approval.
That's right, John. And as you said, both chambers of Congress had an opportunity this afternoon to question those top administration officials on reasons they felt General Soleimani is an imminent threat, and that they also asked him about the long-term strategy in Iran.
I'm not concerned about their strategy. I'm concerned they have no strategy.
Democrats were quick to question and criticize the killing of the Iranian commander.
What's at risk is national security and American lives.
While many Republicans are praising the president for finally taking action.
He is a nasty, nasty person and was a real threat to our security, our national security.
Senator James Lankford argues after months of Iranian aggression toward the U.S., it was time to act.
The restraint that the president has had over and over again, that they take down one of our drones and then they launch rockets at us a dozen times over 2 months, and the president has not responded. He has waited and said if an American is injured or is killed, we're going to respond in a very strong way. He's done that now, and I think that's consistent with our policy.
But Democrat Senator Tim Kaine believes Trump should have cleared the attack with Congress.
In our country, it was supposed to be that we wouldn't send people into harm's way unless there was a political consensus represented by a congressional vote that war was in the national interest. And that's what I'm trying to force Congress to grapple with.
Kaine introduced a war powers resolution to prevent President Trump from further escalating the situation in Iran without congressional approval.
All he's doing is escalating tensions, and he seems to believe, I can strike you, but you can't strike me.
Now, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi announced this afternoon that the House will vote on their own war powers resolution tomorrow, and some Republican senators, like Mike Lee and Rand Paul, have expressed support for similar legislation. Back to you, John and Jenna.
All right, thank you, Abby. Well, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell insists he won't play ball with House Speaker Nancy Pelosi over details of the Senate impeachment trial, saying today, quote, there will be no haggling. His message coming after the Speaker issued a letter last night calling on McConnell to publish his trial plans immediately. She claims the Majority Leader is loyal to the president, not the Constitution. Here's how he responded.
At the very same time that a global crisis was unfolding in real time, she published yet another Dear Colleague letter saying she intends to keep our Commander-in-Chief in this limbo indefinitely.
Now, the Senate impeachment trial cannot begin until Pelosi turns over those articles of impeachment. Democrats say it's the GOP's fault. That hasn't happened yet.
It's extremely telling that Leader McConnell and Senate Republicans are not willing to take a forthright position on whether we should call witnesses and request documents. They can only say that the issue should be addressed later. Their only refuge, not much of one, is to kick the can down the road.
Democrats want an agreement on hearing from certain witnesses in the Senate before the trial begins. Republicans, referring to precedent, say they want to wait to work out those details until after opening statements.
And here now to discuss is Scott Thuman, Chief Political Correspondent for Sinclair Broadcast Group. Scott, good to have you.
Thank you. Good to be back.
It appears some Democrats are starting to break with the rank and file. Today, Senator Dianne Feinstein urged Speaker Pelosi to send over the articles. How much longer can Pelosi hold out here?
Yeah, the pressure's mounting, and it's not just Feinstein. You've heard from Blumenthal as well, Senator Blumenthal, and they're frustrated because they're saying if this is urgent, if there is such a dire need to follow through with a trial, then let's do it now. And if you look at the timelines, I know everyone wants to compare it to previous impeachment proceedings. When you look at what happened with President Clinton, that was 19 days total between when he was impeached by the House and when they began the trial. We're at 21 days right now. And so the pressure starts to build. People believe that the sense of urgency starts to wane a little bit. And when that happens, it makes it a little bit tougher to push your argument that this guy is so dangerous, you've got to get him out. Because if you can wait week upon week without even sending over the official paperwork, it helps the Republicans' argument just a little bit.
Scott, North Carolina Congressman Mark Meadows said that he expects Pelosi to cave to pressure and then for there to be a speedy trial in the Senate. Is that how you see this all playing out?
Well, I don't know that anyone really knows, despite what Mark Meadows may be hearing, because there is so much negotiating left to be done. Now, what's interesting is that fight over witnesses, because if you go ahead and you set the rules and you start the trial, and then after you begin, you decide to go ahead and fight over who can have witnesses, the possible backfiring here for Democrats is that they can say, here's who we want, and Republicans can do the same thing. But Republicans have the numbers in the Senate, so they could vote to approve witnesses. And then if Democrats have someone like a Mick Mulvaney, like a John Bolton they want to bring forward, the president, in theory, could exert his executive privilege, protect them, block that testimony. And then it's a wash, right? Then, even though Democrats think they've got to win there, Republicans kind of get to rely on White House powers to set the stage for how the rest of the trial goes. Even if it's a fast one, Republicans believe that they've got control because they simply have the numbers, and Democrats feel like they're, running up against a brick wall.
Right.
Let's talk about Iran. The president today saying under his watch, Iran will never have a nuclear weapon. Scott, what did you make of his remarks?
Well, I think that he was kind of all over the map in that he wanted to say, hey, listen, we've got this big, beautiful military. It's the strongest on the planet. We can use it whenever we want. But also, we don't want to. We would like peace. I think that that's probably why when you had the intelligence officials on Capitol Hill today briefing all of these members of Congress, that they came out as divided as ever. Democrats saying, hey, listen, that this was sophomoric. Those were the words of Jerry Connolly, a congressman from Virginia, a Democrat. You had Tim Kaine see that there was no proof that there was an imminent threat. And so the president can say whatever he wants at the podium today, but I don't know that that's going to change anyone's minds, and that's why Democrats are saying, we're going to have this war powers resolution tomorrow. We don't want to wait anymore. This is imminent.
You have reported, Scott, on America's booming oil and gas industry, and President Trump, he talked about it today, too. Essentially, America is now energy independent, and that changes the whole calculus this time around.
It does. It's a big consideration in how you handle the Middle East situation, right? Because if you have your own energy, you have your own oil, maybe you can be a little bit more bold. Maybe you can stand off a little bit more. Maybe you're willing to have those confrontations that you wouldn't 15, 20 years ago. When you look at 10 years ago, talking about Texas, the Permian Basin, which is where we went for our show Full Measure, and we spent some time examining it. Look, 10 years ago, they thought that they were on the verge of running out of oil supplies in that part of the world. Now they say they've got perhaps centuries worth of crude oil and natural gas down there. Due to new technology, they've been able to find it. It's not something that this administration did. It's just the way it's worked out. So much so that by the year 2025, they think that the U.S. can export as much, if not more oil than Iraq has been doing. That would be staggering. And so it does change the calculation of how you deal with Middle Eastern nations, especially when there is conflict. You can say, we don't need their approval. We don't need them as much.
All right. Sinclair Broadcast Group's Scott Newman, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Coming up, warnings over cyber attacks in America. What you need to know to protect yourself.
Having sex before you marry is a bad idea. Don't tell me there's no such thing as gun violence.
That just depends on your definition of when life begins.
Watch Dan and Dale tackle trending topics that test your faith on the next Faith Wire, Monday night at 9:30. The Global Lane takes you around the world, providing facts over fiction.
What might rising trade and geopolitical tensions mean for you on the home front?
With over 45 years of experience, award-winning journalist Gary Lane brings you the truth from a global angle.
What about the issue of immigration?
World news analysis you won't see anywhere else.
And it's all right here on the Global Lane.
Watch The Global Lane, Thursday night at 9:30.
Tonight, the U.S. is bracing for what Iran might do next after Qasem Soleimani's death.
While military force may be off the table for now, security experts warn of possible cyber attacks. Joining us now with more on that is CBN national security correspondent Eric Phillips. Eric?
John and Jenna, government agencies and businesses have been ramping up in terms of vigilance, recognizing Iran's cyber troops have long been among the world's most capable and aggressive. A day after the U.S. drone strike that killed Iran's lead military general Qasem Soleimani, Homeland Security issued this terrorism bulletin, warning of cyber disruptions, suspicious emails, and network delays. Trevor Logan is a cyber expert with the Foundation for Defense of Democracies.
We've really watched kind of Iran grow and mature into a more pronounced cyber threat than a lot of states give them credit for.
Texas has already seen a spike on state agency networks.
An increase of attempted attacks from Iran on state agencies at the rate of about 10,000 per minute.
But Logan says the more likely targets are private and attacks often disrupt, not destroy. Cases in point, in 2011 and 2013, Iranian cyber troops overwhelmed computerized systems to snarl U.S. banks. In 2014, they used malicious malware to wipe out data at the Las Vegas Sands casino, whose pro-Israel owner suggested bombing Iran. It's why places like this cyber range at Regent University's Institute for Cybersecurity are so important.
When people come to train to be a cyber defender, they're actually using real systems, generating real data real network traffic. It's not simulated. It's not some two-station lab. It's 15 to 20 network segments and 80 operating systems working together that looks like a small to a medium-sized business.
But Logan says even if you don't have a staff of defenders, you can practice good cyber hygiene.
If you weren't looking for a link to click on, making sure that that's actually where you want to go and that you can trust that site.
And in this election year, a cyber attack could target political or diplomatic targets, much like Russia did in 2016. Only Iran's goal would likely be much more crippling over the long term. John and Jenna.
All right, thank you, Eric. Well, more international fallout after Iran's missile strike. It concerns the crash of a Ukrainian airline shortly after takeoff in Iran that killed all 176 people on board. It is unclear what caused the plane to go down. The Boeing 737 disappeared from radar only minutes after its departure from Tehran International Airport. Iran state TV blames the crash on mechanical issues. The Ukrainian government says it's too early to make that call, and the country's president is asking for a criminal investigation. Iran maintains the crash has nothing to do with last night's missile attack. Still, major airlines from around the world are rerouting flights to avoid possible danger in the region.
Coming up, the historic wildfires and their devastating impact on Australia's wildlife. More Faith Nation after this.
On the home front.
Thanks for joining us for CBN's On the Home Front, where we highlight what the men and women of America's military do to defend our country. CBN honors the men and women in our military with an initiative called Helping the Home Front. It partners with churches across the country to meet the needs of their military families, from repairing homes to wiping out medical bills for wounded veterans.
On the Home Front, Tuesday morning at 10:30.
If you want to be an attorney with a passion for serving people and for excellence, Regent University needs to be high on your list.
Regent's award-winning law school doesn't just create lawyers. We create leaders, judges, prosecutors and defense lawyers, civil litigators, and leaders in government.
My focus has been trying to really make sure we have the future leaders we need for the bench and the bar and for society generally.
You'll learn from highly credentialed leaders who are current and former judges, distinguished scholars, and ACLJ counsel.
I'm so glad I chose Regent. The relationships here have been amazing. The faculty have been amazing. Not everybody's called to the same thing when they leave law school, but they're called by a God who has a purpose for their lives, and He is going to use that education to make a difference in the world.
Regent will prepare you to be a purpose-driven, practice-ready lawyer. To start your rewarding law career, complete the online application, submit your transcripts, and take the law school admissions test by July. Apply today.
Much of Puerto Rico is still in the dark tonight, a day after the island's worst earthquake in more than a century. The 6.4 quake knocked out widespread power and sent buildings tumbling. Many across the U.S. territory have been forced to leave their homes, fearing they may collapse. Some setting up tents and sleeping outside to ensure their safety. Meanwhile, smaller tremors continue to shake the island. In the last week, more than 1,000 have hit. Seismologists say they can't predict when the tremors may stop. And in Australia, storms are bringing much needed rain to the country's east coast, but the lightning associated with them is causing concern over possible new wildfires. Flames have consumed more than 32,000 square miles. More than 25 people have been killed and over 2,000 homes and businesses destroyed. Wildlife have also been devastated. Scientists estimate more than 1 billion animals have died. Christians across Australia are asking others around the world to join them in calling on God.
Australia needs your prayers, America. We need it right now, because we've seen some incredible things happen through prayer over the last few weeks, and firefighters have said how much they appreciate those prayers as well. So please pray for Australia and pray for these bushfires, that they will just be extinguished and that they will go out.
Yeah, send them up. More than 120 are still active. Fires, that is, are still active across Australia.
Well, finally, some positive news to report in the world of health. Cancer deaths in America are on the decline. New numbers from the American Cancer Society show rates dropped 2.2% between 2016 and 2017. That's the biggest single-year drop ever recorded. It's largely driven by declining lung cancer deaths, often considered the most lethal form of the disease. Doctors credit fewer smokers, earlier detection, and advances in treatment in helping to combat lung cancer-related deaths. These latest numbers mark a 26-year decline in the cancer mortality rate. Well, forget ride shares and hailing cars, the future of taxis, when we come back.
If you want to be an attorney with a passion for serving people and for excellence, Regent University needs to be high on your list.
Regent's award-winning law school doesn't just create lawyers. We create leaders, judges, prosecutors and defense lawyers, civil litigators, and leaders in government. Ready to become a purpose-driven, practice-ready lawyer? To start your rewarding career, complete the online application, submit your transcripts, and take the law school admissions test by July.
Nutrition, exercise, essential oils, weight loss, and more. It's Healthy Living with Lori Johnson.
Talk about what's in this.
Join CBN health reporter Lori Johnson to get the latest information from today's top health experts.
This is fantastic.
Find out what you need to know to live a healthier life. Watch Healthy Living, Tuesday night at 9:30.
Woohoo! Hi, Superbook fans. Here's something else you'll love. It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! Whoa!
Millsburg Falls man coming.
Sorry, pardon me. Sorry, excuse me. Ouch!
Are you getting this?
Earn super points to win daily prizes too, and so much more. Time to get back to my adventures. See you soon. It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
Well, finally tonight, if you ever lived or visited Washington, D.C., you're all too familiar with sitting in traffic, and being stuck in an Uber or cab when cars are backed up isn't just irritating, Jenna, it can be expensive.
Oh, it's frustrating. But the latest innovation in unmanned transportation could help with that. An autonomous air taxi made aviation history Tuesday during a demonstration in North Carolina. It was the first time a pilotless car took flight in North America. The two-seat drone can travel up to about 80 miles an hour and carry around 600 pounds. The North Carolina Department of Transportation has been working for 10 months to bring the technology over from China.
But it'll be a while before you can take a ride in one of those. The Federal Aviation Administration currently bans unmanned aircrafts from carrying people, so I got all excited and worked up for nothing.
I love it. I hope it eventually gets to that point.
You and all your friends, 600 pounds. Thanks for watching Faith Nation.
Have a great evening.